for some reason.
Okay.
And I apparently am having issues with my video, but we can start whenever you guys are ready.
Okay. Yeah, he's just starting it up now.
Oh,
Oh, there's Scott.
he's in there now.
Perfect timing.
Perfect. We're all set.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Traffic Safety Committee. I'm just going to read some instructions real here, and then we'll get started. This open meeting of the Traffic Safety Committee is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, an act relative to the extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency signed into law on March 29, 2023. All members of the Traffic Safety Committee are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The Act allows this Traffic Safety Committee to meet entirely remotely as long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream of this meeting may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube via the link listed in the agenda. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Rachel?
Here.
Kate?
Here.
Lisa?
Here.
Chris?
Here.
And staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Scott Charpentier?
Present.
Brian Griffith?
Here.
And Megan Condon?
Here.
Okay. After members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment as follows. By phone, dial *9 to raise your hand and wait to be recognized by the chair. Please note that part of your phone number will be visible to those viewing the meeting. By Zoom, click Raise Hand at the bottom of your screen and wait to be recognized by the chair. The chair will ask members of the public who wish to speak to identify their names and addresses only. Once the chair has a list of all public commenters, the chair will call on each by name and afford 3 minutes for any comments. Okay, now that that's out of the way, before we get to the citizens' inquiries, I got a phone call from somebody over this past week who was the original person who posted the request on Rice Ave. I was able to see the note that was sent, and I need to make a comment here that we are not an authoritative board, right? We are an advisory board, right? So when we make a vote on, up or down on anything, we are making a recommendation, right? It is not this committee's job to say yes or no to anything. We are making a recommendation to the DPW chief, and we're making a recommendation to the select board. It's their determination that needs to go to the people who make the requests. So I just want to make that clear because I believe in the message that was sent, it stated that the Traffic Safety Committee denied the request. And I just want to make it clear that we don't deny, we don't accept, right? We're not authoritative, we're advisory. So, and then the other comment I had was, I know that when we have these meetings, when somebody takes the time to write out a request and send that request in, I want to make sure that they know when when we're meeting to discuss their request. I know on the planning board and on the ZBA as well as the select board, an email goes out beforehand to anyone who has a listed item in the agenda. I'd like to start doing that here as well, right? Again, if somebody took the time to be able to write and make a request to us, I want to at least give them the opportunity to speak in front of us about that request. This person who called me actually was a little upset that they didn't receive an email. The only email they received was the denial and not an email of when we were actually going to be discussing the item. So I'd request it, and Scott or Megan, let me know if that can't be done for any reason. But I'd like, at least an email to go out to anyone who makes a request, when we're going to talk about those items.
We'll do that, Bill. That request came in over a year ago. So we'll certainly do that. When people put in requests now, we let them know that it'll be on the upcoming Traffic Safety Committee meeting agenda, and then they meet on the second Tuesday of the month. It hasn't been my past practice to remind citizens to attend meetings, but I'll be happy to send them an email with indicating when the meeting will be.
Okay, thank you. Rachel, go ahead.
So if someone is not happy with our vote and our deliberation, do they have recourse? Do they go directly to the select board? What's the process for that, since we are advisory?
Now that Lisa is here, who is our select board representative, I will let Lisa answer that.
Yes, they actually would appeal to us because we are the body that put the Traffic Safety Committee together to assist us in doing most of the advanced research and whatever. So yes, they would, instead of the email going out saying that it was denied, if an email was going to go out, that they should appeal it's decision. Is that what we call it? Maybe appeal the decision that was made at this traffic safety if it wasn't what they were hoping it was going to be. Or number one, it would be better to be there so you can speak for yourself, so that, while you're deliberating, there's more information that may be coming. But in the meantime, I guess we would be the final say. The Board of Selectmen would be the final say as to whether or not we would recommend to the DOT that we would like to have this done. So
I would say, appeal the recommendation, right, to the select board.
So just to be clear, this committee votes to support or not support a request. To be clear, is that correct, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Okay.
That's now my understanding that I've been given. So.
Okay, I understand. The term denial, I thought was in my email. I should have indicated that it was not supported. If there was I don't know what an appeal process would be. If I'm not sure how that goes. So, for example, a stop sign is requested. It does not meet the MUTCD warrant standards. This committee views that and doesn't support it. I don't, in the past, or I would not expect that I would go to the select board and say the committee did not support it. Do I advise the resident via email that it was not supported, and you can go to the select board if you don't appreciate the lack of support or something? I'm not.
Yeah, if they don't believe in the recommendation, then they can go in front of the select board and make their presentation there. As far as what, if they don't believe that our work satisfied their needs.
So
I guess
the process has been, I want a stop sign. We would say no because of these criteria, and after doing our analysis, it comes to this committee after the analysis that says it's not warranted. And then it gets deliberated again in front of another board. Just to be clear, yes?
Right, because again, we are an advisory board. We're not authoritative.
Okay, will do.
And just through the chair, what I would say is that on watching the November 15th meeting, talking about the traffic or the heavy vehicle exclusions on Summer and Rice, that when you, Scott, CMRPC had done the traffic counts, and that they did fall within the criteria. That's a little different than saying it doesn't meet the criteria at all. I mean, that would be something even that you send the recommendation doesn't meet the criteria at all. But when it does meet the criteria, and it was something that was discussed because you felt that the roads would be Route 135 and 20 would be a difficult turn or what have you. In that case, those are still the state, state marked roads, and they were designed at that downtown to be able to accommodate that. So that's where her appeal, whoever did it on Summer Street, would come forward and say, but this met this criteria and met that criteria. But we don't feel that we want you to look at it. So that's what we're talking about.
With, all due respect, it puts me as a staff member in a very odd position to be in front of the select board discussing the deliberation and decision of this committee with a citizen appealing the recommendations here. I'm not sure how that presentation and discussion and narrative goes forward. I mean, I'm here to present data and information, and this committee deliberates and considers other impacts beyond data. For example, the potential traffic impacts at 20 and 30 that Lisa just identified there, and how that could impact other travelers. I don't know what. That's an odd place for me to be sitting in front of the select board trying to defend, or I don't know. I don't see how that goes forward in my head, other than me just sitting back and letting the applicant discuss it, and I'm not part of it, or I'm not sure.
Well,
but the select board would have the information that came out in our meeting, right? So if the person who put in the request has some additional information that didn't come out, that's, that might be a reason for an appeal. But if they're just, restating the same thing, then, the select board is probably going to give the same answer if it was based on data and criteria.
So the expectation then, I guess, Lisa, as a liaison, is that the select board, in the event that somebody decides to appeal it to the select board, that all the select board members view the meeting and deliberation, because it's not appropriate for me to present your deliberation. It's potentially riddled with misrepresentation, and that's not. I don't believe that's the right avenue or approach. When we're trying to brainstorm this live, and I'm not sure what. Do you, as a chair, want to attend those meetings and present the deliberation process, or Lisa, as a liaison, does that, and how the deliberation was? Someone, I believe, from the committee should be the one presenting the committee's findings and discussion, and not staff.
yeah,
And I would be fine doing that, right? If that's the way we agree that we should do it. I have no problem, defending why we voted the way we voted, to recommend or not recommend. And, and then, like I said, it's up to the select board, but the select board is the authoritative body. This board is just advisory. It's the same thing as if, groundwater were to make a recommendation, right? And we've actually had cases where, somebody thought that was an authoritative vote, and it's not. It goes to the planning board, and then the planning board also looks at that information.
and almost like in ZBA and the building inspector also has that appeal process.
Right, but the entity that recommended approval or denial is typically the one who's presenting that process to the appellant body. So I would think that it would be a committee member that serves that role, or the liaison serves that role before the select board, as opposed to, if it's an enforcement issue, the police chief, or one of these issues that we're discussing now would be the public works. But it's probably not appropriate for me to be presenting the deliberation.
I agree.
Right. Yep. Okay. And myself as the chairman, that's my role, right? Okay. Is to, whatever this body votes is what I present to the select board.
Okay. All right. Just as long as I know the process, that's fine. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep. Kate, I know you had your hand up earlier. Did you have
Yeah, I
something
did.
or?
I just want to say that these issues, and I know I pointed this out in response to a comment this past couple weeks too, but the meeting minutes and the YouTube video are where everybody's going to find all the details. And we
Mhm.
discussed this in such great length at 2 different meetings. And so I was kind of referring people back to that because I think it's so important that they understand that this just isn't a one-line email. I don't think Scott should have to write them a novel. I think we should be
Right.
saying, if you have any questions, please watch the meeting and then let us know if you want to discuss it further.
Mhm.
Because maybe they didn't think about the impact that 135 at 20 would have, or just something like that.
Yep.
And I totally agree that it should be a voting member of this board. I understand fully that it's advisory that goes to an appeal to the selectmen. I don't think that it should be Scott or Brian because they're not the ones who are voting on whether to make this recommendation or not. So yeah, I'd be happy to do that, but Bill, I'll leave that up to you too. Thanks.
And when we have been replying to people with our findings or our recommendations, we do include the minutes of the meeting, a link to the YouTube video, and typically give them all of the information that we have at our disposal.
Oh,
No,
Oh,
and I do appreciate
thank
that
you.
because this person who was on the phone with me actually did say that they had watched the videos but still had questions. So and while I appreciate a phone call, we do want the people here at to come to the meetings, right, and make because that way we can all have the same conversation, be on the same page. Because if you're trying to make the conversation afterwards, there's a lot of things that can be missed. So. That's why I've sort of been pushing to try and get, that's why I mentioned about the email reminder to people, just who are on the agenda. So,
Yeah, I think we can do a better job of just reiterating that it will be something that they can participate in if they, so choose. So
Mhm.
we will, when we get these coming forward, we'll just make sure that we let them know when the meeting date is and that they can participate.
Thank you.
I don't think you should have to send out a second email when it gets closer. I mean, we meet every month. So if you're putting that in the response to them, I think that should be sufficient.
Okay.
Yeah, just the reminder that, your item is now on the agenda and it's on the agenda for this day. Right.
Yeah, we'll include that in our acknowledgement email. Somebody sends an email that says, hey, I want this. Okay, thank you for the email. It's going to be put before the Traffic Safety Committee. The next meeting is Tuesday, March, whatever. Your item will be on the agenda. Feel free to attend the meeting when the agenda will be posted 48 hours in advance.
Perfect.
We'll do that.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, I guess we'll get started on our agenda. So the first item we have is the community survey discussion. So, Scott, if you want to.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we, at our last meeting, we talked about talking with our peer communities, a similar list that we had when the temporary Traffic Safety Committee was considering creation of this body. It's the same list. I trimmed it down a little bit to get a little more focused and maybe not have you have the onus of 15 towns to reach out to. And then we distributed a list of draft questions. I believe Rachel had some additions to it. We incorporated those additions, redistributed. So I think everybody has seen the list. It has it started as a discussion with speed humps, and then it got into traffic signs, stop signs as well, particularly driven by that request in Northgate neighborhood, and a discussion we had at a couple other intersections. And then some truck traffic questions were added as well. So but Megan, I don't believe we received any additional questions to be added from any other members.
No, it was just the stop signs and the truck traffic.
Okay, and we had the speed humps that we talked about. So if there's, has everybody had a chance to look through those questions? Yeah. And the community list, is it too much?
No, I think it's
No.
the community list is fine. Oh, go ahead, Rachel.
Oh, so no, you can go on, Bill.
Oh, I was going to say that to me, the questions look fine. I think it's it's at least a way for us to get started. And maybe even if we, open up some avenues to all these individual groups, we'll find out which ones want to work with us and which ones, may not be interested.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, Rachel, go ahead.
So my question was, because the TEM committee had reached out to a lot of these communities, do we have contacts from that? Are there people that they already spoke to that, might be good to reach out to start with?
The contacts that they used they varied, because that discussion was about, did you have a traffic safety committee? So some were DPW directors, some were town planners, some were actual traffic safety committee members because they had those on their website. There was a variety of contacts where this inquiry, I think, is more technically driven. So it'd be probably more appropriate either for a DPW director or a town planner. And if you're in a larger community, maybe a town planner, where they focus a lot on, neighborhood developments and things like that, as opposed to a smaller community where their planners are driven basically by planning board and zoning board. So yeah, it would probably be DPW directors and town planners
Okay.
for the inquiries. There's just a little bit different than the first round.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Lisa.
I'm new and I haven't been a part of all this stuff. Do I understand that you already did this once when it was the temporary traffic study? And now you're doing it again? Is there information? What's causing the redundancy?
It's a different set of questions that we did this time. I think the first time, as Scott mentioned, was more geared towards seeing what towns did have traffic and safety committees, how it was put together, and kind of what they did in the sense of the town. This one was more, I would say this one was more detail oriented as far as some of their processes with speed humps, because we've gotten a lot of requests for those. Speed humps, stop signs that are not warranted within the MUTCD standards, and how the different towns go about that, just navigating those waters.
Lisa, if you don't have a list of those questions or that spreadsheet, I can send that over to you first thing in the morning.
Great. Yeah, you can just do it to my address at town hall.
Okay. Yeah, this one is specifically, as they said, just it came about because we were talking about the addition of speed humps for traffic control and speed control in town, and the pros and cons and what other communities are doing specifically for speed humps, and if they're installing them temporarily or permanently and things like that. And then we added a couple of things for stop signs because that issue has come up in a couple different neighborhoods, and truck traffic as well.
Okay, great. That'd be good. I'll look at that tomorrow.
When we talk about stop signs, I know a couple meetings ago, we were focused on four-way intersections with no stop signs, but with little traffic. Is that what we should be focusing on for these questions? Ones as opposed to, a three-way or where it comes to a T?
I think the general approach to the questions is, when it doesn't meet the requirements, what do you do? If it meets the requirement, if you request a stop sign at a T intersection and it meets the warrant, we put it in. If it doesn't, what does a community do when that request comes up? Regardless of whether it's four-way, three-way, or T intersection, just if it doesn't meet the requirements, what do you do?
Okay.
Speed humps are a little bit different because there's really no steadfast standard on where they're applied or not. Some states have standards, some don't. Most of the ones that I've seen are strictly recommendation driven, not warrant driven. And when I say warrant, the warrant's a thing. You know, if it's warranted, there's some data that proves that it is. That's not the case with speed humps.
So, and what about raised crosswalks?
That would be considered either a speed hump or a speed table. That's probably more like a speed table. The difference is a speed bump is very short, narrow. It's a bump, like in a parking lot. Speed hump is similar geometry, just longer. And then a speed table generally is has a level surface in the middle of it to accommodate a crosswalk.
So I think from my perspective, I just wanted to know if we wanted to approve these questions or accept them, including the additions that were made, and if that's what everyone on the committee wants to go with for when they reach out to the different communities.
I don't know what everyone else thinks. I think the questions are good, and I think, you know, it's a good, like I said, it's a good way for us to sort of open up ourselves to start having communications with other towns.
Okay.
I agree with you, Bill.
Yeah,
So-
Yeah,
oh,
Rachel.
you know, I completely agree. I love the collaboration. I think it's been helpful in other, you know, areas too. If I will not be offended if you don't want to ask about trucks, but it does seem to come up quite a bit in our meetings. So, you know, I thought we could add it.
Yep.
I think it's a good ad. I think a lot of different towns are feeling some of the same effects that we are. So it's good to get their perspective on how they're handling those issues, or if they are.
So Chris has started actually reaching out to some of the communities on his list, and if everyone else on the committee, you know, wants to start chipping away at this and reaching out, you can send those over to Scott and I'm going to put together a spreadsheet, you know, by town, their answers, what, you know, kind of summarize everything. And I can send that over to the committee as they come in. Or I'll put it together. Once I start hearing back from everybody, I'll send it over before the next meeting.
Yeah, I think that's better.
Yeah.
And don't wait till you get in touch with all 6 or 7, because you may have stragglers that just have no time or desire. So as you get
Right.
answers, shoot them over, and we'll compile them up. And don't feel weird peppering us with emails. It's what we do.
I certainly haven't felt weird.
No, you have not, Chris.
And you know, keep in mind with the you know, that just send them to Scott and Megan directly, right? Not to the whole group.
Right.
And then
Yeah,
we'll
you can
discuss
just send
when
them
we
to
get on
us
the whole group.
directly. Yeah.
Brian, I don't think you want any of that stuff.
Just here to listen, and whatever you need to send me, I'll do.
Okay, so the next one we sort of touched on, the stop sign requests were not warranted.
Yep.
You want to go over that, Scott?
Certainly. So, you know, we did discuss that at our last meeting. The one inquiry we had indicated it's not warranted. We held off on responding to the citizen until after the survey is done. That way this committee can deliberate with a little more information in their hand. For example, you talk to 20 communities and 19 of them don't care about the MUTCD and they put stop signs wherever they choose. That may change your decision as opposed to the inverse. So my preference would be to wait on responding to the citizen. If they inquire to us what the status is, we'll just let them know what we're doing and be happy to you know, continue discussions with them.
Okay, go ahead, Chris.
So I did, as Scott and Megan said, I did hear back from a couple communities, and for the most part, when it was not warranted by an MUTCD standard, it was typically an extreme situation like a heavy crash location, poor sight distance, or anything like that, which is all things that need to be considered when you are installing the stop signs as well, because, you know, a poorly placed stop sign is actually going to cause more issues than nothing at all. So it kind of seemed like most followed the MUTCD, as Scott had mentioned, but in extreme cases where there's a heavy crash cluster or anything like that, they will go about putting in stop signs there.
Yeah, and I think if you know, I sort of have this up on my screen here. So, you know, just so we're all clear on what the MUTC says. So, the vehicular traffic volume on a through street or highway exceeds 6,000 vehicles per day. Restricted view exists that requires road users to stop in order to adequately observe conflicting traffic on a through street or highway, or crash records indicate 3 or more crashes that are susceptible to correction by the installation of a stop sign have been reported within a 12-month period, or 5 or more crashes reported within a 2-year period.
So for example, we previously had a request for stop signs at Allen and Hudson. And when you look at the crash history, just based on, you know, GIS dots, it has several crashes there. But when you look at the crashes, they would not have been prevented by stop signs. They would have the crashes still would have occurred. So there's a bit of a deeper dive that you do on these intersections to make sure putting stop signs in are not, like Chris indicated, causing a little bit more of a hazard than without. I'm talking about on Hudson Street. Obviously, Allen has stop signs, but I'm talking about implementing a 4-way there.
Yep. And the other thing to keep in mind is that, you know, these are reported crashes, right? If it's not reported, then we're not going to know about it. So, anyone else have any? Lisa, go ahead.
I've got my little book here, my uniform book. On what you were quoting on those criteria, is it either or, like one of those things? It's not all.
Yeah, it says and or.
And
So it would be any one of those 3. From my understanding, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong. You're the
That's
professional.
Yep, that's
So
correct.
of course, sight distance would be enough, right? You wouldn't.
Yes.
And did they give you a list of what poor sight distance would be? Is it, you know, is it footage or vision or?
That's
Yeah.
not in the MUTC. I'm sorry, Chris, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Scott. I
It's
mean,
not in the
we're probably
MUTCD. That's in the AASHTO design guidelines.
Yeah.
They call it the Green Book, but it's not in the MUTCD design standard. It's in the AASHTO's design standards by the Federal Highway Administration. You can find chapters of it online, but the book itself is not free. They charge you through the nose for it.
Is there something that we can get for you, the people on this committee, that helps them? Like you have that book, I have this book, one that you just mentioned, or portions of it? Like, is there?
The Green Book is not something for. It's an engineering design document and guideline. It's not something that I would hand to a landscape architect to derive what sight distances are. That's not the appropriate entity to do civil engineering.
Yeah, and generally Mass DOT has a design standard book as well that follows the Green Book. But like Scott said, it's a really difficult, if you don't know what to look at, it's a really difficult thing to navigate because there's a lot of different factors that go into it, outside of just, you know, looking left to right or straight and back or what have you.
Yeah, because I know even with the truck exclusion, I mean, there's a lot of additional things like the width of a street. It's 16 feet or less, right? 16 feet creates a narrower road where a bus and truck couldn't pass at the same time, or 2 buses or something like that. So that makes the road that much more dangerous without having a truck restriction if it was requested.
Absolutely, but if it's 2 school buses, then correct me if I'm wrong, but the truck exclusion wouldn't apply to them.
That's correct.
So most of the traffic we had looked at was, you know, landscape vehicles, oil trucks, things that the truck exclusion doesn't keep them off of the road. It would really just be tractor trailers. And some of the streets we looked at, there weren't enough of those types of vehicles that would be excluded for it to be considered?
Well, again, because there's more than one thing. So the width is important. Just like Summer Street at the base of Summer going into 20 is
Mhm.
quite narrow. And if that's part of the road width, that has to be considered as well as being as important and not just, I'm sorry if you hear any noise in the background. I have someone over here trying to get somebody to play with them, and when I'm speaking, I can't put you on mute. All right, so that's just one of the things that I know in my research and all the stuff that I've done, that there's several different things, much like with your stop sign or your site view, that you do take into consideration.
Yes.
So that's something, right?
All factors were considered on both the Rice Ave request as well as the Summer Street request, including roadway width, geometry, structure, commercial vehicle densities, as well as alternate routes. That was all part of the studies.
Okay. I did watch both meetings. So, and in some cases obviously Maple Street and Ridge Road and Collins, all of that fell together, where Collins didn't apply for it, but because Collins was on a street that was coming into a restricted area, was given a truck restriction. So that's not overly unusual, especially if there's main roads that you would take anyhow. Okay, go ahead.
Well, speaking of that, I guess we'll go on to our next one of the HCVE for Lincoln Street.
Yeah, so
Scott?
we reached out to Central Mass Regional Planning Commission earlier than usual this year, which was good. So we got in the spring queue. They agreed to provide traffic counts on Lincoln Street, as well as Upper and Lower Pleasant Street, with the expectation of pursuing a heavy commercial vehicle exclusion. Megan and I were out observing some tree issues last week, and just for observation purposes, put our GPS on and sat at the Church Street 290 bridge and said, I want to go to Rocky's Plaza, and everybody knows where it sent me, down Pleasant Street, down Lincoln Street. So every tractor trailer that comes off 290 and doesn't understand that is a very unpleasant drive, I'm sure their GPS sends them the same direction. We have relationships with local businesses that operate large trucks, and they're part of our community, and they understand and do their best to guide their drivers away from that route. But that doesn't address everybody driving in and out of town with their GPSs. So I'm looking forward to getting those counts in and seeing where they land, and then we can consider going forward with a study if that's what the committee so chooses.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes,
I'm
thank you.
interested to see how that plays out too.
Just one last thing. I
Yep.
do know that there is an attempt that should be made by letter to the Google or whoever else the GPS companies are, that these roads have been listed or changed to restrictions. So we'd have to get those addresses to be able so that they would conform. Because you put your signs up and your advanced warning signs, and that would also help.
My last inquiry, which was a couple of years ago when truck traffic was discussed at length, indicated that once it's an official an accepted heavy commercial vehicle exclusion by Mass DOT, it is then a regulation, and it's incorporated into the GPS platforms when they do their updates. So same thing with speed limit changes. If you change the speed limit on the road, your GPS tells you what the speed limit is. When that regulation, when those data sets are updated with the GPS companies like Waze, they're incorporated. So that was my understanding when we were talking about truck exclusions a handful of years ago with the select board.
So that helps with that worry.
Yep. Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you. So Brigham Street.
Yeah, we had one citizen request us to consider a heavy commercial vehicle exclusion on Brigham Street. I haven't requested any counts there. We have a limited resource for counts through Central Mass Regional Planning Commission. The discussion last meeting was to table this and to see what other requests come forward between now and the fall, to see if there's a roadway that may be considered more warranted for counts by this committee. Certainly Lincoln and Pleasant, I would believe, would be far more warranted considering the uses along those roadways as well as the cut through aspects of it. But we have it on here. I think what we'll do in the future on the agenda is shift some things to ongoing and consider if there's something that we need to discuss at length, or if it's just any updates, Scott. No. So we don't lose track of these things. They're still on the agenda. People are aware that we're considering them, but there's just no action at this point.
Yeah, that we're still tracking them. I think that's important, that stay on the agenda. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Rachel, go ahead.
I know we had a brief conversation about Brigham last time. It is definitely a cut through. If you're coming, and Lisa may experience this too, if you're coming from Westboro to the Bartlett Street area or the high school, you're directed to go up through Brigham Street. I'm probably on Brigham Street a few times a week if I'm coming from Westboro. So I do think we'll probably land the same way we did with Summer Street, where the alternate route creates more issues. But I think it would definitely come up when a GPS is a cut through. If they're coming from Westboro to an Amazon, it could potentially, and hopefully they would go on Brigham Street once and never want to go on there again. And I think if they, because it's so densely populated and you have the golf course there, I'm assuming it would probably meet the HDVE threshold, but it would probably be mainly local service vehicles too. That was it.
Yeah, I was going to say by the golf course, that's pretty narrow. So
yeah, no, it would be awful.
Yeah.
And I have to say that I actually have seen, we have a can't think of the company name, but the big green dumpsters that you bring in your house and throw your trash in when you're moving.
Got junk. 1-800 got junk.
Yeah, that's it.
No, it's not 1-800. It's big.
Just-
Anyway.
Is that, what is it, Waste Management or?
Thank you, Waste Management. He uses it regularly, back and forth regularly. And we've had a couple of calls at the selectman's office about it. That, it's a pretty big truck and he's going in a pretty big clip. It's not like there's even anything in it. It's empty. So he comes in where it gets off of 20 and then he goes on to 135. So maybe they could write a letter to them. That might be a little easier. What do you think, Scott? That might be
it's just Waste Management? That's the company, or it's not Harvey's?
No, it's not Harvey's.
Okay. Yeah, we can reach out to Waste Management. We're actually discussing some of the topics with them right now. We'll certainly do that.
I actually think that when I spoke to the couple that came into the office to put this on our agenda, that was what they specifically said, was that it was the waste management trucks early in the morning and in the afternoon.
Yeah, that's twice a day, I think.
Yeah, that's what they said.
Yeah, we'll reach out to them. Other local businesses have been very accommodating. So with these requests, so yeah, we'll certainly do that.
Great, thank you. So excessive speed on Green Street, speed monitoring option.
This resident was specifically concerned with the intersection Green and Brewer right after the 290 bridge. I can't imagine there's any speeding anywhere else on Green Street. I just can't even imagine anybody who does it once would not be, worried when they start climbing that first hill between the trees and rocks. Brian, one of the things we discussed with items like this that maybe aren't a, long-term geometric issue or what have you is, putting it on the list for speed trailers or those, portable battery operated signs. And maybe when they're, the signs aren't being used and they're charged and sitting in the closet, we just kind of pop them up on Green Street for a little while and just to remind people to slow down a bit. I don't think it's it's not in the earlier section where it goes from Howard to Green. It was specifically that intersection area. So
Yeah, I could see that. I could see people, there's a stop sign there, no? Or no?
no, there's one on Brewer. So when you're buzzing up
Right.
Green Street, it kind of opens up where you hit Brewer, the first Brewer, and then you probably throttle up over the bridge, come over
Yeah.
the bridge and say, "Oh my goodness," and
Right.
jack up a little bit.
We can certainly throw a sign up there and occasionally put a cruiser up there. That wouldn't hurt.
Yep. Thank you. Appreciate it. And that sort of moves us to the next one. Whoever set this up did it really well because we're moving right from one to the next one.
Thank you,
like
Megan.
It was made up. Thank you, Megan. So the memo to the select board, I thought we had already sent the memo. So we haven't sent the memo yet.
No, I discussed it with Chief Liver. We talked back and forth. Do you want to write it? Do you want to write it? Do you want to write it? Well, I'm not writing a memo that you want two new officers. And then he left. He left it for Brian.
He knew he was just waiting time for Brian to start, so Brian could
Brian,
write
it's your
it.
budget. Go get two new officers.
Brian,
Well,
if you
talk offline about it a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you need me to sign it, as the chairman of the committee, I'm happy to do that. I can stop by anytime to do that. I
Sure.
work from home most of the week, so.
Excellent. Yeah, Scott brought me up to speed, as did Chief Liver. So I'm aware of the request. I support it as well, obviously, and we can get it done. So is that memo comes from me? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. Typically, you and I work together on it, and we'll pull something together that
Okay.
and we get it over to Bill, and then off to the board and town administrator.
Sounds good. Be
Yeah,
happy
and the
to do
select board's already been made aware of it, so
Yes.
they're waiting for the memo.
it. Okay, very good.
The last one is the STEP program for speed control. Did you bring us up to speed with that?
Megan, you got a little bio on that for Brian and I?
Yeah, so that came out of our last meeting, and I just wanted to put it on there now that Brian is taking the reins. And this was something that Chief Liver had explained in the last meeting, basically saying that the STEP program would enable the police department to act upon data received, including the data from the 2 radar trailers and 7 portable radar signs that the department utilizes. Some of the portable radar signs can operate in stealth mode, which counts and records the speed of cars passing, but they don't display the speed. The signs record speeds at the time of day to give the idea when and where to place resources. So as we're talking about speed humps and the pros and cons of those, I think that Chief Liver had brought this up just to give us another way to dampen speeds without having to, put in like speed humps or something like that. And just wanted to see if this would be something that we want to kind of use in, for speed reduction on streets, and as opposed to speed humps or something like that.
It may be a good tool. I'm sorry, Brian. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Scott.
It may be a good tool in the toolbox in the event, dedicated traffic enforcement officers are put off for a fiscal year budget concern, or the speed hump survey comes back that, it's not typically used in most applications, or most communities don't use it. It's a good way for a department to kind of focus resources. I mean, we're all looking to focus our resources to get more out of less.
Through the chair.
Yes, sir.
So I just kind of, well, first of all, it's nice to see you all, and thank you for having me here. So I had a department-wide meeting today. It was really the first meeting that it was the first meeting I had since being chief, and just kind of bring everyone up to speed and welcome everyone. And it was nice. And traffic got brought up, the discussion got brought up, and I just thought I would let this committee know kind of my message to my officers today is I have a sergeant now who's going to be assigned as our traffic supervisor, basically. And so any of the requests that I take, I'm going to take these notes, such as the Green Street request, and that sergeant's going to get the information and he's going to relay it to the troops during their roll call. We're going to have a specific time during roll call where we discuss the areas that we're going to focus on today. There's going to be short-term projects and long-term projects. Short-term projects, in my opinion, are streets that I can't imagine a car speeding down there, but guess what? We'll give that resident that, we'll give them the attention that they're asking for. They want an officer down there, we're going to go down there. It's not a big deal for us to do that. And I told them today, I said, simply the presence of a police car with a radar out the window is gonna slow someone down, probably, obviously at that moment, but probably for the next couple of times they travel that road. I know in the community I live in, one particular street gets, it's a cut through and there's always a cruiser on that street. And I just firmly believe that the presence of a cruiser there, and not only the presence, but active motor vehicle enforcement is going to slow people down. I love it when, remember back in the old days, right? When you're maybe a teenager driving down the street and you'd get the flash of the headlights, right? That was the old, oh, there's a cop ahead running radar, and you give the guy like a little, hand signal, thanks a lot. That's actually like back in the day, we could stop a car for doing that. I don't think our younger officers even know about that trick anymore, but now it's on Waze, right? They drop the little spot that the police are there. I love that. Who cares? It's slowing people down. That even though it's on Waze, that's great. We're there. Someone put it on Waze, and guess what? Now everyone's slowing down. So I was pretty clear with my troops today. We are designating one of our sergeants kind of taking on the task of supervising all traffic complaints, things to that nature. I will probably, in a couple of months, we'll probably share space with him on these type of meetings where it might not be me, but it might be him. Jeremy Treffry is going to be the sergeant who's going to be doing that, and he works days. So the message has been sent today. They've always been really active anyways. Our numbers are well above average as far as motor vehicle enforcement compared to our surrounding towns. But it was reiterated today. I think there's some new energy too. Clearly it's one of the biggest complaints we receive in town is traffic complaints. And it's not just us, it's every town, but we can certainly do something about it. And again, I just think when we get those complaints from the residents, even though it's a small dead end street, okay, go on down there after roll call today. Just do me a favor, run radar for a half hour. You're probably not going to get anything, but it's going to make the resident happy. Can we do it every day, be down there every day? And is it really time well spent down there? Probably not, but can we give them a little bit? Sure we can. So we'll get that stuff done. And I guess my question to the board, this committee, is when if we receive requests or complaints, do you want to hear about it? Because oftentimes people, they don't know about all of you, no offense, but they don't know this committee exists. And I had a resident come in the other day. That was the day after I got sworn in, and he brought up some traffic humps that he wanted to see on his street. So, and I didn't, I told him that I would put a cruiser down in his driveway, and but as far as the request for the speed humps, I suggested that he maybe go through this committee. Is that a reasonable thing to point him in this direction?
Yeah,
Yes.
and actually our site actually has a link to Scott's input site, if you will,
Okay.
where somebody can put in a request to then come in front of us.
Okay.
Right, and make that request, and then we'll review it with the data and the requirements to see if, we want to, again, make that recommendation to the select board or not, or to the, that moves forward.
And I believe I have it set up on the website where if traffic issues come in, it comes to Scott, myself, and Brian. Scott, is that right? Did we add him in? You're on mute.
We have, the laundry just went ding, so I had to put on mute. Yeah, we have multiple portals for inquiries: sidewalk inquiry, sign inquiry, truck inquiry. But when you come to a traffic inquiry, it does go to the chief as well as Megan and I.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's great. And we have obviously our own website where people can email us and, hey, I want radar run on Ridge Road, and that's going right to us. We'll assign someone, we get someone down there. That's just what we do. But as far as those actions like stop signs, speed humps, I'm going to kind of refer them to the group, because I think that's probably the best place to discuss this.
I agree. And I think the other thing, Chief, I know Chief Liver was getting us this information, but the crash information that you guys collect, right?
Yep.
That's of interest to us as well, because that sort of helps us pinpoint specific locations in town that we may need to review, even before a request comes in.
How would you like that? Monthly or?
What does everyone think? Quarterly, maybe?
That might make more sense. I think you might get a better collection as to what's going on. I'll do whatever you want, but
yeah, maybe the last year's data quarterly, right? And it gives us something to look at to say, what's happened in the last year. Are there any spots that we really need to look at in town?
Okay.
And Chief, if you want, I'll put that on my list of things to do. I'll just request it from you.
Okay.
And
all right, that'd be great.
so you don't have to remember, and I'll put it on my calendar and I'll just
Okay.
request it quarterly from you.
Excellent. Okay, we'll do.
Thank you,
Okay.
Megan. Okay. Did anyone else have any other comments, questions? Go ahead, Lisa.
I was just wondering, that equipment that you talked about, that if you didn't have to have the speed going, but it did give you the number of cars and the speed with which they were going. Can it also be used for like a traffic study? Does it do the amount? I mean, the weight of the vehicle, or no, it's just those two things?
I believe it's pretty simple. I don't think it has that technology. The sergeant who I was speaking about is trying to learn it a little better, because we weren't utilizing it other than displaying the speed. I honestly don't think we knew it did that until this committee came about. I think it's very basic. I don't think it does that. I'll double check, but I'm pretty certain it's just pretty basic.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to count axles, but
Is there anything that goes across the road where those signs are?
No, I don't believe so. But
Okay.
Radar. But that would be great. I mean, that would be a great asset.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have to always go to CMRPC.
I mean, our engineering consultants have that capacity in their equipment to do the traffic counts. It's just more cost. The heavy commercial vehicle exclusion study, analysis, and report runs just under $10,000 each. So there are limited financial resources to manage these requests, and those limitations get stretched a little thin when we're having consultants do the counts as well. In the old days, you'd sit there with a clicker at an intersection. Remember that, Chris? In the old days. Now you get tubes and smart boxes that record it to the cloud. It was very expensive when you had an engineer sitting there clicking buttons. So prices come down, but it's still pretty expensive.
Do they have anything new? I mean, have they started anything where it's not going over a cord?
That's what it is. It's those tubes you ride over. When we did the traffic counts on Bartlett Street, we captured everything: speed, axles, density, frequency, motorcycles. Some kids on motorcycles deem it as a challenge. You know, we caught somebody doing, I think it was 92 miles an hour on a motorcycle. And he had been doing like 38 just before that. So he obviously saw the tubes, turned around, and found sixth gear.
Good.
Okay. Thank you, Lisa. So at this point, I will open this up to public comment. If there's anyone in the public who'd like to have any comment or have any say, please raise your hand. Okay, seeing nothing. So we'll move on to the approval of the December 12th minutes. Did everyone have a chance to read over the minutes?
Yes.
Does anyone have anything to add? No?
If I have a
Okay.
typo that I need to fix, is that, do I need to get full approval from the committee? It's just driving me crazy. I had a comma where I need a period.
I think we
Didn't notice.
we can move to accept the amended minutes of your period instead of a comma. How about that?
Thank you.
If it's immaterial, you can approve them and we can make the changes before it's posted.
Thank
We
you.
won't blame you, Rachel.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes of December 12th, 2023 as amended?
Oh, motion to approve the minutes or move to approve the minutes for December 12th as amended.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, Rachel,
Aye.
Kate,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
and I'm an aye, so that's unanimous. Our next meeting is, and I should have had my calendar up and I don't. Why can't I even find my
February
calendar?
13th. February 13th.
Thank you. February 13th.
I'm not going to be here that day because I'm on vacation.
Nope. Hopefully you're going to be having fun instead
hope
of
so,
sitting
too.
in a traffic study.
Sitting on a beach.
Okay. Nice. DPW, thank you very much for all you've done the past weekend with this storm, and I hope you guys stay safe tonight. I hope you get some sleep this week. I know you've been busy, and Chief, I'm sure you've been busy as well. So thank you, everyone. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
A second?
I'll second.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, Rachel,
Aye.
Kate,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good night, everybody.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Night.